One of the amazing things as we celebrate today the Feast of the Epiphany, my friends, and it's the same on Christmas, just how few people realized what was going on right here. That's the entire group of people that witnessed the greatest person that came to this earth. There's probably more animals around than people. Isn't that amazing? The greatest person that came on this earth, and there's just a few people that recognized him. Shepherds on this side, 3 wise men on the other. You know, that star was evident for everyone to see, and there was something distinctly about that star. And yet only 3 chose to follow it. Why? Perhaps many are too busy. Perhaps some simply weren't interested. Perhaps some thought, what good can come from a star, right? Others had obligations, and probably another huge reason was, it's a burden to follow a star, isn't it? But the Epiphany teaches us many lessons, and I'd like to reflect on 2 of those today. There's a story told of soldiers that were serving in Sri Lanka during World War II, and that's a jungle area. And for security purposes, they had them scattered throughout different sections. And then they would put where they ate and recreation in the middle of it, so they would follow these trails and get to the middle. They were kind of headed to the middle, and then they were sleeping, and their camps were surrounding it. But the paths, of course, being in a jungle, were heavily filled with vegetation and things like that. So during the day, it was no problem, but at night, it was a great problem trying to walk along these trails and see where you're going, because you don't want to fall off the path in the jungle. Who knows what's off the paths? But one night, another soldier said to another, they said, you know, how do you navigate this path? He said, how don't you not get lost? You move through that with these jungle with ease and no flashlight. How do you do that? And he said, it's simple, mate. He said, just look up. It's simple, mate. Just look up. And you know, the soldiers looked up, and when you look up, my friends, you can see right above it, and you can see the path in the trees above. So it's very easy to follow if you simply look up. And I thought, you know, life would be a whole lot better, my friends, if we looked up a little more, isn't it? And that's the first lesson of the Epiphany. Looking up, spending more time in prayer, my friends. It keeps us in a good direction. Keeps us in a good direction. What exactly does that mean, to be kept in the right direction? And how would prayer affect that? You know what it affects? The choices we make. The choices we make. Our prayer helps us make good choices. Do you make people make incredibly poor, bad choices today, my friends? Our world is an example of it. Our world is an example of it because they're not looking up. Poor choices. The second lesson, my friends, is this Epiphany is a journey of faith, isn't it? It's a journey of faith. Many people don't want to do the journey. It's too busy. What relevance is it coming to church here, right? We have other important things to do. But probably just as important, and probably the main reason is, religion really puts a burden on our lives, doesn't it? It's a burden. We could be doing a lot other things. Do you know how many times you spent in church the last 2 weeks, my friends? A lot. Seems like every other day I'm preparing for another homily. It's a burden, though, isn't it? We could be doing incredible other things. There's a legend of a grandfather clock. It was sold after it was in the family for 3 generations. And it was a legend. And as soon, you know, those grandfather clocks work, the larger the clock, the bigger the weights, right? The bigger and heavier the weights. And of course, you know, you pull the weights down and the weights go up. And then as it ticks down, then the weights go down. So every day you have to pull those weights up. So the owner, the first thing he did was he took away the weights. And the clock said to the owner, "Why did you do that?" He said, "I wanted to lighten your burden." He said, "Put the weight back." He said, "The weight is what keeps me going." Yeah, it's a burden, my friends, to come to church sometimes. It's a burden to pray sometimes. But you see what it does? It keeps us going, my friends. It keeps us going. And what happens when we keep going? Even when it feels like a burden. What exactly happens? Do you realize how hard it is to travel in those days, what the Magi did? You realize that? They traveled hundreds of miles on a camel. You know how hard it is to travel by car for a couple hundred miles, let alone a camel? What they faced with those weeks and months that they traveled? You talk about a burden. But you see, when they knelt at that Christ child, my friends, what happened? What happened? They had an epiphany. An epiphany. They saw something in a very clear and meaningful way. And the religion became very real. And that's what it does. When we persevere during those tough times, my friends, we see things, those questions in our minds, in a more meaningful and clear way. In a clear way. And that's what we all want, isn't it? We want to see our faith in a clear way that applies to our life. And being persevering, my friends, even sometimes when it feels like a burden. And so today, this beautiful feast of the Epiphany, it teaches us much. It teaches us to look up. It keeps us going in the right direction, my friends. And it helps us to see life and our faith in a very clear and meaningful way. God bless you.